Hello, hello. Just
Hello.
having everybody call in. Oh, I see some familiar names. Lovely to see some of you again. And for those of you that I don't know, welcome, welcome.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Well, for me, it's good morning.
Okay, good morning, ma'am.
I'm here from New York, but I feel like we have people from all over. So where are you calling from, Musha?
I'm from India, Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Wonderful. Well, good evening to you.
Good evening, ma'am.
All right. So we'll just give it a minute or two as people start to call in. And while we're waiting, I mean, feel free if you would like to put your name in the chat, where you're calling in from, even maybe what you teach. I know that this is a social science webinar, but maybe there's something specific you teach, a course in social science that you teach, or maybe you're not a social science teacher. Perhaps you teach a different subject, but you work with social science issues in your class, which is just as well. So please feel free to just drop that in the chat. All right. Philippines, that's wonderful. Good night for you. I think it's a little bit late in the Philippines. So thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us. India, Philippines, Nepal. Lovely. Welcome, Radhika.
Thank you.
Yeah. I love when we have a truly global audience. It's wonderful. And I know we have a few people here from Generation Global as well. They're calling from different parts. Oh, Zenya from Armenia. Excellent. Ukraine. Oksana, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, likewise. So great. Well, as people are filing in, I'll go ahead and just introduce myself as well and get us started, introduce our speaker today. So my name is Lisa Petro, and I am the Education and Quality Lead for Generation Global. And we're really excited to invite you all here today as part of our Generation Global teacher community. You may have noticed this year, we're really trying to provide lots of opportunities for our teachers, not only in gratitude to say thank you for all of the great work that you're doing out in the world with young people, but also for being part of our learning community and using the skills of dialogue to really promote peace and sustainability and well-being for young people around the world. So we really are grateful, and we honor and we respect you, and we wanted to create more spaces to celebrate you and connect you with each other. So some of the things we've done this year, the educator dialogues happened a few weeks ago. For those of you that were able to join, that was a wonderful experience. We hope that you can join the ones we have in the future. And then we've also had some of these webinars to support understanding how we can use dialogue more specifically in special subjects and academic subjects. So earlier in the year, we did have a dialogue in science webinar where we looked at math and science and how dialogue can be part of that academic area. And today we're going to be diving into the social sciences. So with me is my esteemed colleague and a brilliant expert in the field, Angelica Santana. And she's worked in the education and training field for 15 years. She advocates for the integration of technology and intercultural skills to empower global citizens. She was formerly a social science professor at Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico, and she created a methodology there called connective multicultural learning, which was a nationwide virtual exchange strategy. So lots of experience in the field of connecting young people around global issues. Currently, she's the education and technology consultant for Generation Global, and she's collaborated with institutions around the world, for example, the State University of New York and the German Academic Exchange Service, DAAD. Since 2021, she's been here with with Generation Global as our education specialist. So I am very excited to welcome Angie, to this session and to turn it over to you to get started. Enjoy, everyone.
Welcome everyone to this webinar, Unlocking the Power of Dialogue in Social Sciences. As Lisa was saying, my name is Angelica Santana, Angie, and prior to this role here at Generation Global, I was a teacher for 15 years, and some of the subjects that I taught were citizenship and democracy, international perspectives, global issues, and geopolitics in the 21st century at the high school and university levels. So I'm delighted to be here with you today so that we can explore the fascinating intersection of dialogue in the social sciences. So if we are all ready, let's dive in. And next slide, please. You can see these three central questions or pivotal questions that are important for us because it's gonna guide us into thinking how can we enrich the learning experiences for our students. So you can see the first question is, why is dialogue important in social sciences? And the first thing here is that when you are thinking of this as a teacher and you understand the profound impact that dialogues create in your classroom setting, and you start thinking about those ways in which you can create those opportunities for your students, in which you can also find a way to have an inclusive perspective. Because we know that, of course, in social sciences, there are complex social issues and sometimes sensitive issues that if they're not discussed is a loss of opportunity. So thinking about these three central questions will guide us throughout this webinar. So I invite you to think about them, to think about why is it important to have dialogue in social sciences, to think about how can I create more opportunities for dialogue in my social sciences classroom, and also how can I use dialogue to create this inclusive environment in my class. So let's start by thinking about this next question, which is what does dialogue mean to you? And when you think about this, I want you to think about the answer as a learner as well, because you were a learner first, but also as an educator. So try to think, what does dialogue mean to you? How has dialogue influenced your understanding of the world? How has it transformed your teaching methods? And even if you have used dialogue for fostering empathy in your classroom, or maybe because you were, having a conversation about complex issues and you wanted to have diverse perspectives. So the way you look at dialogue and the way you define dialogue, since you have those experiences, right, is valuable because it's going to shape the very essence of your learning environment. So now we're going to make a quick exercise, a Zoom poll. And I want you to take a look at these images that you see on your screen, these 5 images, and observe it. Of course, each one of those images encapsulates a unique facet of dialogue. So take a closer look and yeah, let's think about which of these images resonates with your understanding of dialogue the most. So maybe it is, the first photo that you see here, or maybe for your dialogue, I don't know, is somewhat similar to the fourth option. Of course, there's no right or wrong choice. It's just your own experience. And yeah, thank you for participating. I see that some of you have already done so. If you haven't, just take a look at the photos and try to connect with that feeling. Since, like I said, right, dialogue is probably the approximation that you will have to use it in your own class setting. So I can see now that, yeah, you have mostly decided for the 5 options, more or less the same. It looks alike. And yeah, it's funny because now I've seen that number 1, the first photo, is the image that has been selected the most. And yeah, maybe you think of dialogue as a way of helping others, right? As a way of, having this assistance or inclusion, or maybe it's about being brave, right? And sharing your own point of view and providing a safe space for your students to engage. And yeah, so most of you selected the first option. And then for the rest of the photos, it was an equal percentage mostly. So thank you. Thank you for that. But now that we have thought about dialogue in a sense, let's take a look at what dialogue is. So when we talk about dialogue and we take a look at the definition, you see that the heart of dialogue, it's where you find that common place where the participants or where your students or people, they learn from one another so that they understand not only their values, but their perspectives and their belief system and their experiences. So dialogue can also be seen as a common place, right? And as a place for learning. And that's the most important characteristic of dialogue, that it is a strategy that you can use to make your students better understand each other, and also to feel safe, to feel brave, and to feel included in this mutual learning space. And also here at Generation Global, we emphasize that dialogue, it needs to be reciprocal. It needs to also acknowledge similarities and differences. And sometimes, and we're going to see a few strategies coming up, but sometimes when you think about dialogue and you're trying to talk about some social issues, right, that are hard to talk about, and that you think, well, maybe I shouldn't be bringing this question in the class, since it's probably is going to bring very different perspectives, and I don't know how to handle it, and I don't know if that is a learning experience for everyone. Well, maybe that's when you bring dialogue into the table, to open up the space for your students to think, oh, maybe we do think alike, and maybe we have some differences since our belief systems are different, or our values or our experiences, but we can grow and we can take a panoramic view of that same social issue from different perspectives. So it enhances my comprehension not only of that social issue, but of the world. And next slide, please. So now that probably we have discussed and shared a little bit about what dialogue is for you, how, when you think of that word, what comes to your mind, let's have another poll in which I will ask you, what is the role of the social science teacher in dialogue? If you are in a position of, facilitating dialogue in your class, what should be your role? So probably you're thinking, well, I'm going to use dialogue because I want to guide young people to conversations so that they can relate their own identities to the topic. So maybe you're guiding your students in understanding the relationship of their own experiences to that specific topic that you're covering. Or maybe you to teach young people how to convince others of your point of view. But in a sense, when you are thinking about this second option, remember that dialogue is all about appreciating diverse opinions and about fostering empathy and tolerance and understanding. So if to think about dialogue in a way that they can use it to persuade others, maybe that's not the best idea. That would be probably a debate or a discussion. Keep in mind that dialogue always offers the opportunity of mutual understanding and, of course, a respectful exchange of ideas. Maybe you want to use dialogue to share your own opinion as an adult. And sometimes as teachers, we do that and we don't realize that the students are listening and perhaps they are going to change the way they think because they heard our point of view on something. So it's important to take a step back and for us as teachers to be facilitators and to leave this space of dialogue for the students to share their own points of view, to use their own voices, and of course, don't feel intimidated by our own voice being the teacher. So the last option in the poll is set to help young people communicate effectively on complex topics. So also, we as teachers, we can empower our students to try to communicate about those complex ideas and of course, in the way they are enhancing their dialogue skills, right? So thank you for participating in this poll. And now we move forward to thinking about those benefits of using dialogue as an instructional strategy in our class. We can see, of course, that dialogue is a strategy that can cultivate diversity skills, right? So when you are able to place dialogue as a tool for, making students appreciate diversity, you're also opening up a window for them, not only into different perspectives, but also into being open-minded citizens, right? To having, that flexibility to embrace diverse point of view and experiences. And it will consequently lead you to being a global citizen, right? Because dialogue will enable your students to actively strive into broadening their horizons, into thinking beyond, and not also to hearing about others' perspectives, but also as a way of self-reflection, right? When they are also able to self-reflect, they gain self-awareness and they can even learn about their own identities and think of, well, why do I think the way I think? Where do I have this point of view? Maybe I could, open up my perspective and understand something as different as my other classmate, right? So it's also an opportunity for self-reflection. We can also say that, well, it is obviously, it gives you a chance to exchange ideas. So when they are able to express their opinions, and maybe they are discussing, I don't know, a pressing social issue in the community or in the country, or maybe you are, you know, having a conversation about global challenges, or maybe you are discussing and dialoguing about an active citizenship project or civic engagement. So it's a powerful, powerful way to brainstorm and to exchange ideas and to be the foundation of some of the projects that you can you know, include in your classroom. As we have said so far, a dialogue is a strategy that 100% builds into inclusive spaces, because a student, it needs to feel safe and needs to be brave enough to voice theirs and to feel heard and to feel accepted. And of course, we also consider that dialogue at the issues, perhaps trying to discuss, I don't know, a historical event, and you want your students to deeply connect to that event, even in an emotional level as human beings, and to understand through critical thinking and through research, and maybe into using a number of activities for them to explore these complex thoughts and to have intellectual growth, of course. And last but not least, you can. So dialogue is powerful because you are also this opportunity to students. You don't know what's going to happen in a relationship. Perhaps student never talked to through dialogue, they're able to understand where the other student is coming from. Why is the other thinking, even being the way he or she does? So in that sense, it helps build deeper relationships in the classroom. And of course, it will also have an impact on the member of your class and commitment. Because when you forward group communication or feelings and probably ideas, questions that you might have of a specific topic. So now let's start talking about how can I create, you know, dialogic experiences in social science lessons. Next slide, please. And we have prepared for you 3 effective ways in which you could foster engaging dialogues in your social science classrooms. And of course, trying to think about how to make your classroom interactive, but also to keep learning meaningful, right? Because as social sciences teachers, we not only want our students to understand a specific topic, a specific theme, but we want them to think deeper. We want them to think about humans overall. We want them to be able to connect even sometimes different disciplines so that they can have, you know, a transformation in the way they view a specific event. So let's begin by talking about our first strategy. And I'm going to introduce you to talk moves, which is it is to like starters that can then start a conversation or by their peer to one. So with talk moves, and we're about to see a video, you use these sentence starters to get the conversation going. You use sentence starters to your students about how to initiate the conversation dialogue. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to pause you there. Apologies. It's just that your audio is breaking up, and we're pretty sure that it's your connection. And so would you maybe turn off your video? I'm wondering if that will help the connection.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Give me a second. Give me a
Thanks. Apologies, everyone. We'll just take a moment to make sure that the connection is working properly. All right. Are you there, Angie? Always having to manage the online space. It's our new reality that we live in.
I'm so sorry. Something
No
is
worries.
happening with the connection. I already tried to fix it. Let's hope that it works now. Please.
Okay, I think your screen is frozen, but the audio sounds clear. So yeah, I don't know. We'll give it a go.
Oh, okay. Let's try. Please let me know if you see something else happening. Okay. All right, so let's continue where we were left at. And I was introducing you to talk moves, and I was sharing with you that these are sentence starters that can help your students join a conversation. So maybe if you have some students that are shy, or maybe if this is a new topic that you're exploring in the class, and you want to know how to bring this new idea and to even understand how the students think about that, talk moves would be a good example of how to bring dialogue into your classroom and help students through providing them with sentence starters. So let's take a look at this video that Lisa will share with us about tag moves, so you can see that in action.
So I teach in Plymouth, in very southwest of the UK, where there is very little diversity, and one of our challenges are enabling students to
to participating in a conversation fully.
Sometimes we all need a little bit of a Kickstarter to feel like we can contribute. Children are going to struggle a bit, depending on how confident they feel in speaking up in class. And yet this teacher wants everybody in the class to feel valued. So the kids are all learning phrases that can inspire other kids to contribute more easily.
We're trying to build a conversation here that is a community of caring and respect. So look at your talk moves on the table today, and I have a post-it note here for you. Talk moves are essentially sentence starters that students can use to get themselves into the conversation and to draw other people into the conversation.
By the government, and they just can't figure out what to do.
I taped the talk moves right on the table so that they would be ever present in everyone's mind. Today, I want you to keep track of your talk moves. Every time they used a talk move, they put a check on their sticky note. So if somebody at your table looks like they don't have a talk move check mark yet, invite them into the conversation. How could you do that?
Say like, what do you think?
Definitely. Would you use their name?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Everything about activating a child's cognitive skills begins with activating their social connectedness. Verbalizing and using language and working with peers creates that kind of social stimulus that drives the development of the brain.
I pretty much look at the thing every single time to see if there's like something I could say, like a clarifying question. Can you explain more about like why you would get in trouble?
He spray painted something on his rival soccer team's school, and he like, when you ask a person a clarifying question, it's either, oh, I heard you said, or can you repeat what you said, or to add on to.
They help enormously with language learners. They give everybody a platform to jump into a conversation because half the sentence is there for them already. But they also challenge other types of learners who may be accustomed to doing independent work and they need a bridge to collaborate more with a group. It pushes kids out of their comfort zone of social conversations and it moves them more towards a professional and an academic kind of register.
All his accomplishments in his past, like all the other marches he had, like Martin Luther King, his other previous marches, and he wants to help his next march.
I heard you say previous marches. Like, does it say anything about like?
Yeah, like he was in Martin Luther King marches.
I do talk moves because in order to have a great discussion, everyone has to feel like they're part of it and valued. And when they walk away, they really have bridged a gap with someone that maybe they wouldn't have necessarily talked to or talked to on that level.
This teacher is aware of children having different levels of comfort and discomfort, of making their skills visible, and she's getting kids to support each other's participation with these talk moves. This teacher created a pathway for every single child in this class to belong.
Sharing the video with us. And I hope you can hear me and see me all right. Is that okay? Yeah, maybe so. Now it's working out. So as you can see from the video, Talk Moves gives you the opportunity as a teacher to provide these sentence starters that are going to be like the 50% of their participation, right? It helps the students take those sentence starters, and we can see them here via on the next slide, and they can add on those ideas. So for example, you can see that they are using, I don't know, if they want to add on something, they could probably say, I would like to add on what Lisa said. Or if they are, you know, thinking about reasoning, it's I agree because, I disagree because, and this is true because. And these categories of ideas translated into sentence starters help students think about what they are listening, open up, of course, active listening and participation and critical thinking and all those dialogue skills that we clearly as teachers need to enhance in our students, right? So I want you to think about while we are looking at these sentence starters and this strategy in particular, I want you to think about if this is something that you could use in your classroom, if this is a strategy that you could probably set up, and if you see that it is simple to use. Because as teachers, we are always looking to find new ideas to use in our class, right? But sometimes if it gets too complicated to use, we say like we're hesitant. But talking moves, since it is quite simple and it provides you with the opportunity to pretty much use it whenever you want or whenever you see the chance of learning, because we as teachers, we notice sometimes we are talking about one example, if I don't know if it's an economics class, or if you're discussing, I don't know, geography and migration, or if you are talking about the human impact of climate change, right? You see an opportunity for the students to share their insights, and you see that there might be different points of view, right? Well, this is when you can use talking moves. It's going to help the students voice their opinion. It's going to help the classroom feel included, and perhaps those kids that are not as participants, they can jump in pretty easy, right? because they are given a quick way to interact, and also a very concrete and specific way to place their ideas and voice them, right? To structure the way they think. So let's take a look at the next slide, which is an example that I created for a lesson plan. So perhaps you are exploring migration, right, through geography, and you wanna use talking moves. And so maybe you are going to ask your students to have a dialogue about how geography influences migration decisions, right? So probably the first thing that you want to do if you are doing a similar activity or a very simple and quick but powerful activity is to introduce the topic. So you are introducing the importance of geography and how it connects probably to migration patterns and the effects and the consequences that it might have. So always putting a framework or a concept into the students' minds, it will help them later on to engage in dialogue. So probably after you presented that idea, that topic, you ask them to form groups of 3 to 4 people, and you encourage them to have a dialogue about what they have seen, right? So probably they have seen the effects of migration in their own communities, and how geography plays a special part on that. And you're probably giving them some questions, right? So that they use talking moves as a strategy to start their dialogue, to have a conversation in smaller groups. And maybe after they have done so, you leave an activity where they write down what they have learned, right? And it is important because the channel or the strategy that was used was dialogue. So they can learn about concepts, they can learn about characteristics of that topic that you're teaching, they can learn about one another, and they can also leave evidence of what they are learning through reflection. So talking moves, as you can see, can be easily implemented. You can do so perhaps at the beginning of a topic, or maybe you are using it as part of a project, right? And you want students to dialogue first to see, well, maybe they choose a pathway so that they keep researching on a specific project, or maybe you're going to use it at the end as a reflection of the whole topic and what they have learned. So I'm going to share with you in the next slide some key questions that probably you introduce the students. As a teacher, when you facilitate dialogue, it is always important to formulate key questions. Some of examples for that migration and geography activity might be, how is migration connected to geography, right? So a very initial question. What have you observed in your community is a migration effect on geography? And the last one could probably be something like, which regions and communities do you think are most vulnerable to migration because of geographical factors? So as you can see, these 3 key questions are going to provide the student an opportunity to think about their own experiences, to think about what they have observed, what they have heard, or even a testimonial, and then they can bring it and put it in the table. So one important tip for talking moves is for you as a teacher to be prepared and have those key questions that are going to get your students started. And of course, probably you can even, write on the board the sentence starters for the talking moves, or you could probably print them out, or just have it ready for when the opportunity to use the strategy comes in place. So I would like you to share, probably in the chat, what you think about talking moves, how you could implement it if an idea came to your mind, perhaps about a specific topic. You can share it here in the chat, and I'll be reading your comments. And of course, this webinar, it gets better when you participate. So thank you for also placing your ideas and your questions in the chat. We will have an opportunity at the end to have some questions and answers. And so, yeah. Okay, let's introduce the second strategy that I have for you today. And these are called dialogue preparation activities. So dialogue preparation activities are a valuable method to have your students engage in meaningful dialogue, but also as a way of going deeper in their understanding of various topics. Here at Generation Global, we offer ready-to-use resources on diverse subjects. So we have some resources that include a bunch of lesson plans on climate change, on the rights of women and girls, on wealth and poverty, on quality education. So today we will focus on a specific activity from the wealth and poverty resource, so that you can see how you can bring into your classroom these dialogue preparation activities to get the class started on something specific that you're covering in that day. So when you are using these lesson plans or these dialogue preparation activities, think about these tips. So first of all, always introduce the students to the concepts that you want them to learn, giving them an overview, an introduction to the concept is powerful, because then they can later connect their own stories and experiences and testimonials to the topic. And, or if they don't have any, they can conduct, right, their own research. But having an explanation or an introduction, and then afterwards connecting to their own experience, it will help them be prepared for dialogue. And if on top of that, you create those key questions that we were discussing in the prior strategy, will help them to start building their own reflection on the specific topic, and as a way to have a comprehensive understanding of the concepts that you, of course, want them to learn. So you could here decide if you want them to have a dialogue in smaller groups, or if you want to mix having them in a smaller group from 3 to 4 students, and then doing a whole class dialogue. So here's what when you decide what's more powerful for learning, right? Let's take a look at the wealth and poverty resource. Here is an activity that is ready to use, as all of the activities in these resources are. You can actually download it in the Generation Global's Ultimate Dialogue Adventure through the teacher dashboard. There are various resources that are for you there, ready to use on a range of diverse topics. But this one in particular is about wealth. And here you can see how dialogue is used as a way of learning and distinguishing between material and spiritual wealth, and how it influences the students in their own lives. So you can see here the structure that we discussed in the previous slide. You introduced the concepts first, and then the students are, having a dialogue in smaller groups about their own thoughts on material and spiritual wealth. And you can invite them also to share what they learn afterwards, and use it as a reflection activity. And in a sense, you can see here that I've included a couple of questions for them to reflect at the end. So you're probably having the setting of a whole class discussion. So not only in this activity did you have a small group dialogue, but also at the end, an opportunity for the whole class to reflect on those questions. So I invite you once again to take a look at those materials that are ready to use and that they all use dialogue as a tool. And so if you are teaching economics, there's the wealth and poverty resource. If in your class you're talking about human rights, there's the the rights of girls and women resource. If you're even, I don't know, talking about hate speech, you can find resources that can help you bring dialogue into your classroom. Of course, being respectful and setting the context for a safe and brave space. Let's move to our third strategy of today, which is one of my favorites since it is about video conferencing. And of course, video conferences are a great and unique opportunity for your students, not only to have dialogue, maybe as a preparation activity for joining a video conference, but an opportunity to engage with intercultural dialogue with students from various countries and all around the world. And your students not only will be preparing to have a dialogue of a specific topic, but they will also improve their communication skills. They will be discussing global issues. They will, of course, boost their self-confidence and use critical thinking and active listening and reflection and all those dialogue skills that are helpful if you want your students to be global citizens. So I am going to share with you an activity, an example of how to use video conference, perhaps in a history class, right? So I have included a topic about World War II. And the topic is about humanity's strength and survival. And probably here in this specific example, the students are going to have a dialogue about the impact that the war had on people's lives. And they would probably talk about resilience and the process of rebuilding, right? But they will also bring that historical part into their own lives. So here you can see how powerful this is. A dialogue, it can be used in history classes to make them feel connected to a historical event, to the reasons and the causes and the consequences and the decisions that some important actors took. And they can start imagining how it was in those days. They can research about it. So it opens up curiosity. That's another thing that's so useful about bringing dialogue into your class. In this particular example, as you can read, I have provided a setup in small groups, and first they answer some questions. They go through these questions. For example, how did families cope with the challenges of war during World War II? Perhaps they can talk to a family member, or they can research about that, and they can start a conversation in groups. And after they have, talked about this, they can go and learn about peace and security, which is one of the topics we have in our platform, the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure. And they can complete the topic and gain an overview of the importance of peace and security and how, of course, it connects to this social sciences team. So sometimes when you are teaching a specific topic, you can also take a look at the topics we provide in the Ultimate Dialogue Adventure here at Generation Global and see how you make them fit. And of course, your students will feel so happy and interested in having those conversations, not only with their own peers, but with peers around the world, and getting a different understanding about peace, about security, and about another 14 topics that they can learn about. And of course, once you have provided this opportunity for dialogue, you can book your students into a video conference in which they would, start sharing their own perspectives and bring dialogue into the video conference, of course. Here are some key questions. When it comes to video conferences and you book your students for that, you will receive these key questions. So I'm sharing with you right now the questions that your students will receive if they book into a peace and security video conference. And this is also a way for you to prepare beforehand your students join the VC. Use these questions to prepare them to have a dialogue activity. Perhaps this is where you say, well, now I think I could probably use talking moves with the key questions to prepare my students for VC. So you can see how you can mix all of these three strategies, and it depends on your own creativity. It also depends on how you want your students to feel about a specific topic, and how deeper do you want them to go. And before we move forward to our Q&A part of the webinar, I just want to leave this last slide with you for you to consider if you are bringing a dialogue into your social science class. So first of all, align your dialogue theme with a unit you're teaching in the curriculum. So perhaps you're thinking, well, maybe there's a topic that the students, I don't know, in my 10 or 5 or 20 years of experience, that topic in particular from my history class, from my geography class, it doesn't move forward. I don't know what to do with that topic anymore. Then you can bring dialogue into your class. Now you know 3 ways in which you can make it interactive, in which you can go deeper, in which you can build into your students the dialogue skills and take them close to being a global citizen. Also, dialogues need to be thought and practiced. So if you are trying to implement one of these strategies in your class, the first thing I can recommend you do is to create ground rules. And this could be a good activity too, because in a sense, you are giving them a set of rules that you can even do together as a classroom. What is a yes and what is a no when we have a dialogue, and you have it visible for everyone to see. And your students will get used to that, right? And it is something that is learned. So if you can have a set of rules that you all agree upon, or maybe that you all build, it's important because it will provide this safe and brave space that they need to share their ideas. Also, always encourage your students to draw personal connections between their lives or what they see in their communities to the topic that you're teaching. This is a way where you can get your students thinking about how they connect to that. And sometimes we as teachers, we have, that student that says, I don't understand why we're seeing this. Why is this important in my life? This is the way dialogue answers that question. When you bring the topic closer to a student's experience and have him or her voice their own points of view. Of course, guide the dialogue once you're there. Guide the dialogue, ensuring that it is respectful, that you are seeing that everyone is demonstrating empathy and understanding, and be mindful about your own participation, because sometimes when we bring our own voice into a dialogue and we set our own point of view, we can also impact on how a student thinks or feels about a specific topic. So it's also important sometimes to take a step back and just be a facilitator and guide the dialogue process. And of course, don't forget to implement those dialogue rules that we discussed about, since it will set the context for dialogue to happen in your class. So now we have a few minutes left for your Q&A. And of course, your questions are invaluable, so please don't hesitate to either open up your microphone or type them into the chat before we close today's webinar. So as you can see, the videos that we saw today, they were shared in the chat. There's one video in particular about video conference that was shared a couple of minutes ago that you can see in your own time, and it's about how our video conferences conducted and the importance and the benefits they have.
Well, thank you, Angie. That was a very informative and comprehensive presentation. I mean, you really gave us lots of great strategies and examples of how to use those strategies to think about. So if there's anyone that has any questions, please feel free to put it into the chat or open up your microphone as Angie mentioned. We got a couple of comments. Meenakshi says it's advisable to have dialogue for all topics. I definitely agree with that. And people saying they're going to try these strategies in their class. Thank you, Joseph. He'll definitely go away and give these a try. Ekta asks, what if the learners are not at all interested in a dialogue? How do I get them started? Any advice for that, Angie?
That's a very good question, Ekta. And I think that that's the point, right? When you feel that there's a topic that maybe the student, they feel it's boring, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't connect to their own points of view. What if you create some questions, guiding questions that will make them see the connection of their own lives and experiences, what they have seen in their community, in their country, in other places, I don't know, at social media. How can you make them feel connected to that topic? That's, I would say, the first step to opening up their curiosity. And I believe here, Meenakshi, you were asking, is it advisable to have a dialogue for all topics? Well, I think it depends on how much you have brought dialogue into your own class. So let's say you have a very, very sensitive topic, and this is the first time you want to include dialogue. I will advise that you first have, another prior activities where you involve dialogues in other topics that perhaps are not as complex and sensitive, so you can set the ground rules, so you can make them have an experience, so that when they come to this specific topic that might be more sensitive than others, they already have the experience and they feel free to voice their opinion, and they are respectful in the way they frame their ideas. So maybe if you are planning into bringing dialogue for a specific topic that you think it's going to be sensitive, use some other activities first where you encourage dialogue as well, and work on your ground rules with as a collaboration. And thank you for your comments too. I appreciate what you are sharing in the chat. I see another question here from Atima. Are there any precautions to be taken by the facilitators, especially if it's about sensitive topics like religious beliefs or gender identity? For this particular question, Atima, I really invite you to take a look at our resource that is called Difficult Dialogue. And I think it's going to be very, very useful for this specific thing that you're asking. You can find it in our platform at Generation Global in the teacher dashboard and download it. And it will be very, very helpful, especially if you're talking about religious beliefs and gender identity, for example. Thank you for your comments. And well, Lisa, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for answering those questions. That really great to point out. There are definitely sensitive topics and Difficult Dialogue's a great resource. So thank you, Angie, for mentioning that. So I realize that we are just about here at time. So before we leave, we're hoping that you would just take a quick survey, this poll that pops up. If you wouldn't mind just answering these 2 questions quickly before we end. And while you're doing that, we just want to say thank you so much again for being part of the Generation Global teaching community, for using dialogue with your young people. And of course, you know, we're grateful that you're using our resources, but that in general, you're using lots of wonderful resources out there like Talk Moves to increase peace and sustainability in the world, in the classroom, in the world. So we just thank you so much for your time. And hopefully we got almost everybody answering. So maybe we can get everybody to respond to the poll. We'll just give it a little bit more time. And of course, you can find this recording on our YouTube channel. We'll have this up and ready. So if you want to rewatch it, or if you want to share this with your colleagues, please do. And we'll also be sending out some slides from this presentation with those lesson plans that Angie has prepared, those activity plans for you to go away and use if you like in your classroom with your students as well. Okay. So I think given the time, we'll go ahead and start there. Thank you again. And we hope to see you in the near future in an educator dialogue or another webinar or just online in a video conference with your students. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon, evening, and night. Thank you.